Beef. Okay, aye. Excellent. Next up is the information update on the Island Public Safety Garage. Are we ready from a technology perspective or should
No.
we? Okay. We'll keep going then and just let us know when you're ready and we'll jump to that. Visitors' comments, is there anybody that is here for anything that is not currently on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Ferry service update. Peter Wilcox is here in person.
Yeah, everything I'm gonna say, I sent it to you earlier today in an email. And there are the 3 questions that probably should be answered before next week. Next week, Thursday, is the Ferry Advisory Board meeting in Rockland. They are, who to communicate with was one question. At the moment, I believe the updates are sent to myself and Janet. And if you guys want, I could have them, or we could ask them for them to be sent to the whole board. Up to you. That's one. The second one is more interesting. How does the select board feel we should change the tariff? We are facing I think, a 13 or 14% tariff raise. And the question asked at the last advisory board meeting was, how do we want to do that? Are we in favor of a straight across the board tariff raise? Or do we want it just focused on cars and trucks? That's a question that needs to be answered. And the third is reliability. And I don't really understand where this question is coming from. They seem to be saying that if we ask for 100% reliability, they're gonna have to spend more money. And I think that, speaking for myself personally, we would be likely to understand delay or cancellation due to weather, but not because a crew member has gotten so drunk that he can't report to work the next day. And that's the but that's the feedback they're looking for. What reliability do we expect as an island? So those 3 questions. The other thing is of note, Bruce made a note today and now, so actually, Genevieve McDonald announced her conversation with Bruce that he has withdrawn the notion that all the ferries will live on the mainland except for Islesboro. He still is proposing that Islesboro live on the mainland. And that, speaking on the emergency ferry task force, the wave buoy is expected to go into Lincolnville in the next couple of weeks, and this is from our purpose, something that was offered by the University of Maine. So that we can collect good data on the seas going into the Lincolnville Pen. And try to show that the proposed wave attenuator, which is much like the one in Islesboro, will not be adequate to base a ferry there year round. So that's still happening. And that's where we're at, pretty much.
Thanks. Good summary. Should we take the questions one by one? I mean, my take on who should be included on those, I mean, I think if you and Gabe as alternates, with Gabe as the alternate and Janet are on the advisory board's email, I have a feeling they probably prefer that just because that way they have, your terms to keep track of and they don't have to keep track of who's currently, how the select board composition changes in each island after each town meeting, and I would just rely on, I think you and Janet are doing a good job of forwarding that communication, so if that feels comfortable, I feel like that probably would streamline things if that feels comfortable to others.
Yeah.
Question 2. Tariffs. Anybody have feedback on how to allocate 13.5% increase?
Doesn't matter. Is what we say really. I'd say just, I personally would just say level across the board. In my opinion.
I sort of am leaning towards the same thing.
I think we're gonna piss people off if we start targeting cars and trucks versus passengers or commercial versus personal.
I think in an ideal world, well, I know one of the things that I've heard DOT say is, and it's true, moving passengers is less expensive than moving cars and trucks. I'm just worried that, we aren't really set up, we have a parking problem already. I think we're not really set up yet to help people be able to take advantage of, sort of change that at this point. And I also don't know that anything that we propose necessarily is gonna be.
You say that parking problem is already exacerbated, like if they want to encourage foot traffic, then they need to meet us in the middle and get that parking lot done. And then maybe we could turn and support them, encouraging more foot traffic. Maybe as a motivator. Light a fire, so to speak.
Thoughts?
I go with your first comment, both of you, so I think you just kind of spread it across and then keep fighting.
Is there any way to fight the tariff? Like, that's my only suggestion is. Is there any possible way that we can even prevent them from trying to do it?
They were talking about it. Like,
Yeah, as soon as they did it.
They released the first one, they were like, oh, that's not gonna be enough, so.
And
they're-
that was in his statement of this is another 15 to 18%. By the time the ink dries.
Scott, go ahead.
Have we looked at what other ferry services are doing from a tariff perspective? Because I know there's some of the privately funded ferry services that serve the Vineyard and some of the, not Vinyl Haven, but Vineyard in Massachusetts, those are private. And they charge higher rates for commercial vehicles that are coming from off island, not necessarily that are based on island. So I don't know how you can potentially split up tariffs, but I certainly wouldn't want our on island businesses being charged, higher commercial rates. But there certainly is an argument for charging off island commercial people that are coming on island every single day, a higher tariff. They're coming here to fulfill contracts. They're gonna obviously be passed on. Those charges are gonna be passed on to the people that are doing the work. But it's something to be considered. I just see on islanders being, flat across the board. I hear you, Pete. I think it's not a bad idea if you don't have any options. But it seems to me like there might be some options from a commercial perspective. Again, would not want to hurt on island commercial people.
And if you think about, we've asked them or brought up in the past, like resident and non-resident rates, and they really was not received well. Like the logistic, basically arguing that the logistics of proving who's a resident and who's not was, if I recall correctly, considered one of the biggest hurdles to that.
Yeah,
Which to me seems like you could probably pass out a card to put in your wallet, that should show the ferry person, but.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from 100%, and if I thought the DOT would be open to that idea, might say the same, but.
And I know that, probably, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago, now the Island Institute commissioned an independent study that looked at ferry models from a number of different places, and DOT was involved with that, kind of with the intention of trying to get them to understand other models. I mean, it may be worth saying at this point, we would, I guess, recommend 13.5 spread across the board, but would ask that the DOT consider a resident rate structure.
Well, Shay, it's my understanding that they said we could sell the tickets for whatever we wanted to if we bought them first. So if there's no change in revenue to them, we could buy tickets and give them away to passengers and charge trucks 3 times more. I'm just throwing something out. But then we'd have to take responsibility for buying the tickets and selling them.
Yeah.
the other thing you might want to think about.
What? Take it off this. Right down like a 2-car price spaces down than the current one. That's interesting.
For the long term, that Genevieve might be going to the root problem here is there's a percentage that we're required to pay. It's 50%, all right. And that's an arbitrary number that was, maybe we could.
More understanding of coastal issues on the transportation committee, and Genevieve, I think, would know
Right,
how.
and this wouldn't be for this year clearly, because the budget's meetings, they're now starting, so you gotta go for 27, but anyway, something might be something,
Okay.
anyway.
All right, last question. Can you remind me of the third one again?
Well, the reliability issue, but
Oh.
I almost see that as a.
If you're not shooting for 100%, what are we doing? I mean, we understand that that things happen, but if their target is 95%, that is them looking at percentages and saying, well, I don't have to find sick coverage for somebody today because we're
Within our.
Yeah.
within our buffer, right? Yeah.
How did this come, how did that?
Bruce Van Note said this at his meeting with towns, was they were proud of their, 95 to 98% rate, and they felt like that was
Stop right
sufficient,
there.
and we were kind of like, well, I mean, isn't the target 100%? And he's like, oh, well, the target's 100%, that's gonna cost more money, like,
The last time I had a cab driver to give me 98% of the way to my destination, sure.
any other questions on ferry service? Owen?
What was the last statement that you made seemed pretty important? Did we finish that one up? About all the ferries being stationed on island except ours, what was that all about?
Well, that was an email from our lobbyist today, who said, quote unquote, Bruce has changed his mind about moving the ferries to the mainland, except for Islesboro. That was the explanation. I mean,
In essence, he was taking your support away from you, because if he gives everybody what they want,
Yeah.
Alpro has to stand alone at that point.
Well, I think hopefully we don't have to, I believe that we won't have to stand alone. I
Hopefully,
really,
the thing you hear,
really,
several more that have not been released yet, and it sounds like the Department of Transportation is planning to schedule 1 or 2 ferry days so that everything that relates to this issue will be done, over a shorter period of time so that people coming from off island from island can get off island and go to Augusta to talk, so. More work to do, more to come, and I think the next emergency ferry service task force is next Thursday, the 20th, since we have budget workshops every Wednesday in March.
yeah, we have a ferry advisory board meeting that morning in Rockland, and then in the evening, we have the. So maybe I'll know something more next Thursday. Probably not.
Do we know on the bills that are going forward, which ones they are, and who's the primary sponsors for the bills?
There are two, we know, the LD numbers on 2 and who the primary sponsors are. I need to get that information to Carrie so that she can put it online.
Great.
Yeah.
Just because I know there was like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
That were pending, but if it's the one that makes it law that they have to be on island, that's one of them, that would be a good thing.
Shay, isn't there also one that recommends a 60-40 split on the revenue sharing?
I don't know.
I thought there was.
Sure.
Seems like you're right. That's gonna be the minute the volunteers, we have to pay more taxes to support the island, then they're gonna. It sucks. But
Anything else on ferry? All right, let's go to Upper Island Public Safety Garage. Steve,
What I like to do is get everybody aggravated,
you're welcome.
yeah, thank you.
There's chocolate in the dish over there.
Yeah, oh yeah, then give them sugar. That's sugar.
Oh, it's not good.
Okay. I only have, I think, 4 slides, maybe, or yeah, 4. All right, so an update. As you can see on the screen or on a handout, so since 2 weeks ago, we were notified that the building itself, gosh darn, went up 6,200. It says 63. I apologize. I thought I got that corrected that. But anyway, $6,200, 7% increase. We also were notified, because of all the things that are going on with tariffs and stuff, that another 15% increase was expected April 1. And that turns out to be $15,000 more. So we had closed the gap. um, to meet the 432 number, we have a pop here, we have the ways of handling that. But, I'm gonna present some facts here, but at the same time, so those are the two facts, and we took the recommendation from the conversation 2 weeks ago and asked, to get a revision on the entire plan, moving from, the current, heat pump approach to using, the in-ground, radiant heat through a typical boiler system. All right, so those were those. So the next slide. Since then, one of the things that was suggested was that, well, are other fire departments using the heat pumps, versus, traditional boiler things, so. Excuse me, I actually, and one or two other people on the board here made calls. And I happened to catch, there's a town called Hodgson, Maine. And I called the other day and said, I'd like to talk to someone about the heat pump. He said, well, the chief happens to be standing right here. So I had a nice conversation with Chief Kidd. And they put in their heat pumps a few years ago. They were an existing facility. But he said they really are good and reliable, he said. And they set the heat pump thermostat, a few degrees higher than the boiler. And he says the boiler very rarely kicks on. I mean, it's had a tremendous decrease in the cost of fuel. But he said, even when they go out, because the heat is really not just maintained in the air, but it's maintained by the warmth of the cement floor and the walls and the insulation, everything, that when they came back, there was nothing running because it had already recuperated the temperature in them. So he was a big proponent of the heat pump. They had 2 or 3 put in their facility. So, the point to that is only to state that there was a great deal of discussion around those 2 options. The concern was that the recovery times, the water in the Islesboro up island would be inside, so therefore that water would be the same temperature that they have to refuel the truck with initially. So, we're not putting 38-degree water temperature into a truck, we'd be putting 65-degree, So there's a lot of things to discuss, but I just wanted to point out, we did reach out to other facilities just to ask, what that was about. So, going to the next slide. So we've been at some quote inflection points. We are right there now. So I've listed a couple options. And 2 weeks ago, we as the select board said, we're comfortable purchasing the building without a contract. We all remember many people in this room were here at the last meeting, because we seemed like we had some elasticity in our decision time frame. And it was prudent to delay that decision till we got some more information, mostly based on the idea that we would go back and ask for a revised quote. We had a call with the architect today and the other committee members. They're working on that. They couldn't get that all put together, the contractor, today, but we will have that, they said, for sure by the next meeting. So we will have a revised quote. We already have one quote with that $6,200 increase on it, right? There's going to be some additional dollars, I would assume maybe $2,000 to $3,000 more, based on the architect having to go back and they're doing more work because they're having to redesign some of the drawings and some of the options going to a boiler. Where's the boiler going to sit? Is the slab proper? And so we've got a few thousand probably going there. But it does seem to me that we as a community need to say, if we want to save this project, that we need to purchase this building now. We need to authorize $25,000 and have that aspect of the project paid for. And so if we say, we're gonna have a discussion on that, because we have to get input on that, but that's, I think, kind of the one thing we can't move. The things we can move, though, are below that. We have an existing quote that we can use, adding some additional fund, money that's gonna come, probably, we know 6,200 plus, let's say another 3, it's 9 to 10,000, all right? But we can certainly wait to get the quote in the next week and a half, and be able to bring that to everybody and say, okay, now we have 2 quotes, one with a traditional fuel in slab heat, or the one that we already have that has the heat pumps. By the way, there are 3 heat sources in that building, based on the current one that kind of got lost in that discussion. I just want to point that out. There is the in-ground, so we can always add to that. There's the heat pumps, but there was also 2 additional heaters in the ceiling with fans that helped in the recoveries. And so there was heat pumps and 2 additional heating, I'll say, units that to recover quicker. All right, so just want to make sure that we're aware of that. So what I want to ask everyone to talk about is, number one, how do we feel about going ahead and purchasing the building now, knowing that we can't afford another $15,000 increase? I open it up. You open it up to the floor.
Where's the building?
I'm sorry.
Where will the building be held until it is?
Okay, so I asked that in the building. Now, the building won't get delivered till they thought around early May. So it's the only place they couldn't keep the building, so they're gonna deliver it. I'm assuming that therefore that we would put it up where the new facility is gonna be. But by May, if we, in 2 weeks, let's say the end of March, we go ahead and sign it, we say we're gonna move forward, we may have a slab already done. So, but yes, they're not gonna keep it, we're responsible for it, we would have to tarp it, whatever, go ahead.
So if you're gonna take the building and put it up at this site.
Yep.
Are you gonna have some of the groundwork done prior to that being delivered?
Don't know any of that.
Cause there's more to consider there, because if you're gonna want access and to make sure that it's in a good flat area.
Yep,
The way I look at it, you're gonna have to do some site work prior to them putting that building over here.
yep. So the good news is, to that point, I think we'll have a decision on this, let's say by the end of March, on what we're gonna do. We can have a contract signed. Once we have the contract signed, then we can prioritize what needs to be done in the sequence in order to accept the building, number one, get the rest of the area, graded and ready to go, and then pour the slab and everything in a sequence that allows us to do that. Go ahead.
Does that guarantee the contractor buying the building and putting it in place?
No.
Does that guarantee? Cause that's the problem we had before, was the longer we waited, especially when you start getting in spring, that's the problem I had with the renovation. The longer we wait, everybody's gonna be booked up, which kicks everything back months. And so we've done a good thing by purchasing the building and saving, what'd you say, 15%?
No, well, 15,000.
$15,000, which is good.
Yeah,
But then at the same time, you're still prolonging it. And is that really getting the job done?
well, Fred, to your point, if that's the bigger, after the last meeting, I'll say, a couple days after that meeting, spoke to him personally because I had not had that, ability yet. And I asked him 2 things. One, I said, do you, if we get this done by March, end of March, and we buy the building, are we gonna be able to move forward quickly? And he said, yes, he goes, all these projects keep moving, so, yes, it's an issue, we have to get a time slot, but he's not gonna guarantee a time slot till he gets a contract. The second thing I asked was, if you remember, we as a committee were not accepting his language at the bottom. There was that kind of hedge thing, so I
I
said,
didn't hear that part, so I don't know.
okay, well, there was we'll look at the numbers and everything, and then once we do that, we'll sign the contract. And I told him, we're not gonna give you the money he's asking. I don't wanna confuse it. There was 25,000 we gotta put down for the building, but there's like 25 going to him for the to secure the contract. And it said, we didn't wanna give the 25 to him prior to having a contract. So we talked about that. I said, you really need to change that. We need to have some ability to have, lock you in with conditions on your side. And he said, fine, he would change that. So we haven't seen that.
Okay.
But we're working on that aspect.
Thank you.
But go ahead.
That's the question. So just based on your conversation with him, you feel like he will, he expects to put us in his time slot if we choose one of the two quotes that he plans to give us, hopefully before our next meeting. Is that?
Yes, that's what he said.
Is he the window of time of like, how long it'll take him to go from us saying, yes, we will sign a contract to him producing that contract?
Well, there were a couple of steps between, there was, we have to review the contract, we have to, there were some additional stamps that were required on certain,
So,
site, stuff, but I would think it's fairly quickly.
so if we look at this next quote on the 26th, right, which will be our next meeting, theoretically, is that correct, 25, 26? And on the 1st of April, it's expected to increase $15,000. If we say yes to the contract, but then it takes him 4 days to produce it, are we gonna maintain that cost of the pre-April 1st price of the building, or are we gonna
Well,
be?
that's why I said I'm trying to separate the two items. There's a purchase of the building
Correct.
now. Like we agree tonight, we do a recommendation that we purchase the building now.
Right, purchasing the building is part of that.
No, we're actually separating it out. We're moving forward without a contract. It's a risk. I want everybody to realize that. But the risk is tied to reducing a $15,000 increase.
I get it,
So,
working it out.
okay,
But still, if we say yes to something on the 26th, we should be able to sign it for that. But at least one more time.
yeah, the idea would be if we agree tonight that the building should be purchased and we do the recommendation, then we'll work with the process, and I don't know what that takes, but it certainly would be before. And I do know that we have to cut the check to, I did ask this question as well, to North Point, the builder, because they are a registered distributor of that product. So we're gonna have to put together a little legal document that, that company doesn't put in their pocket and go away, that they have our money, so. There was one back there in no,
Yeah, I had a question, and I apologize if you answered this because I was out of the way for a moment, but, did the fire companies that you talked to, did they mention that their heating bill had changed going from oil to?
oh, yeah. This guy, the one I only really got to talk to one chief at this one, but he said that, I didn't put it in there, but he said their oil costs went way down. He said it very rarely kicks on. Even after they open the door and stuff, and they leave, it may kick on, but he says when we come back, it's already recovered.
Are they solar powered?
Oh, I didn't ask that question.
What's the cost differential between what you're cutting on the oil and what it's gonna cost for the electric?
That's a,
I didn't try,
Okay.
I mean,
Yep.
yes, I was just trying to get what I was trying to cover was is using a heat pump a ridiculous idea in a firehouse or not? And nobody said it was ridiculous, but is there a real preference for the oil? And at most places that we're talking to, and I will continue to talk, are facilities that brought heat pumps in because they got grants to do so, not brand new facility, like from the ground up. So we're a little different in that.
So.
Oh, Mark was-
Mark.
Yeah.
keep going.
On the building purchase idea, now, I would encourage and favor that. And what that will show to the contractor, up to now, we've been doing a lot of promises. Contractor he's still trying to figure us out. If we purchase the building now, which we're gonna need it and save the money down the road, it will show our first step of good faith that we're gonna have to pursue this project.
Yep.
So that's the first step that yes, we should get the building and make provisions to receive it. But that would show the contractor, we're gonna see this through. Cause he's got a lot of balls juggling in the air. So that's
Good.
that little note.
Okay, I agree.
For phase one of deciding tonight. The other two parts, I'm fine with waiting to see what the difference is. But the little note that if we go with the
Good point.
conventional boiler idea, and if I read this right, there would be not much cost savings with the boiler. I disagree with that. A 400 amp service is not cheap. It's wicked expensive. I'm no electrician, I don't know numbers. But at the meeting I went to, town warden meeting, one of the electricians that works for Northport Builders, when I mentioned that it's a 400 amp service we're considering and heat pumps, he said he doesn't understand why we're gonna go 400 amp service. Cause it's very, very pricey. But that's a decision we have to make once we get this second quote and look at A and B. This other station that you got information from, some of it's great. A disadvantage I see is any department on the mainland can have a service tech repair these heat pumps. On Alsboro, if it's gonna blink out, it's gonna be on a Friday, with Monday a holiday. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So there's nobody, you got all these heat pumps in town. And anybody that's gonna service it, has a license, and the technology comes from the mainland. JT is not gonna get retooled or educated to deal with it. So you're gonna have, in the future, you'll have problems with all these heat pumps. Is my prediction. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody could come and set up shop. But I'm still open to anything. At this point, I'm just praying that we get something rolling.
Yeah, so I did, and thank you, Mert, good comments, and also the fact that I did not point that out, I put that there because that's what I was told. At the bottom here, it says, you know, we're gonna choose the lower cost option, but I did say note their indication that there will not be a saving with the boiler, in fact, they may see it go up. Now, I know about nothing about construction, so, but I just wanted, that's what they said, so I didn't want people to be blindsided when, you know, when the quote comes through, so but I don't know until we see it, let me go there and I'll come there.
Chief took pretty much everything I was gonna say, besides one, the most mainland departments don't take pond water into consideration. We fill our truck, if we ever fire in the winter, we have to fill back up either here or at a fire pond. Those are frozen. Will heat pumps be able to get the heat back with a cold tank? Because we work for Vermont Energy where we have oil tanks that we take from oil from outside and put in the building. It takes 24 hours or more with oil to recover.
With inflow heat.
With inflow heat.
Now, let me ask you this, though. We are putting in a water tank in this building. So the first fill of, I don't know if that's gonna fill your truck 10%, 60%, how big?
The 1,500 gallon tank, yes, it's inside and it would be warmed up by the building heat.
Right,
I wanted that, just something that JT had from another job that
yeah,
he had to change out the tank, so I thought I'd utilize it.
great idea.
He was gonna make a hot tub out of it, I said, not yet. So the idea of that is, I don't have any recharged water in the winter. Fresh water. So the idea was to put that in the station,
Right,
and then, yeah, that'd be warm water going in. But it's a one-time fill, so in other words, when we're done with the call, we go back and
Yeah.
fill it up if we're on the north end. Here, I got the 10,000 gallon tank here in the ground with that ground warmth. So it's not, frigid cold, but in operation, we're moving water, pond water, whatever the season is. In wintertime, it's gonna be cool. And then we go back into a station and the room air is gonna have to just equalize everything.
right, and that's what I was, just to your point, which is a valid one, but there will be some quote, warm water from that first,
Well, the question I have with that tank is, if we're not having any water there, how are we gonna fill it back up?
well, you would have that problem. I mean, how are that's one of the
So we'll
issues
fill
with the building,
cold pond water, and then now it's
Right.
gonna make now it's gonna make it even colder
but the tank is gonna be there, so there will be water in it initially for the first
for the
fill.
first fill, and then.
You gotta
there's
go get-
another call where we had to draft off of it, and now we're gonna fill it back up with pond water. Now, we have a ice cube.
Yep.
There plus the tank. I'm not saying heat pumps is not a bad idea, I'm saying why don't we worry about oil heat, traditional as a primary, and down the road, we can fundraise, we can do something for the heat pumps where, yeah, we can save money for oil down the road, but right now, the trucks are expensive. Packing tanks, get any damage to it. My family lost a house. If we lose one fire truck, the island's in a very disadvantage.
Yep.
Why risk it?
So let's have this discussion. I mean, we don't have a number yet. So the oil might come in cheaper and it might not be perfect, right? But what we're really faced with tonight is the approval of purchasing the building today, theoretically, that we're gonna take the risk, that we're gonna be able to move the project forward based on the quotes we get next. As soon as we get those, we'll get those listed out and, so people have time. It's gonna be pretty obvious because we've given you all the detail in the first one. We'll get, the detail in the second one, but we need to talk about the purchase. Go ahead.
So you haven't communicated with all these folks about this. What is your recommendation?
Okay, my recommendation is the project will fail if we don't buy the building now. Because I think the money's it's just gonna keep, I don't think this is gonna be the only increase with the way the government is right now and the tariffs and stuff. Steel is gonna, is a major issue and it's gonna go higher.
Yep.
But that's my thought.
Okay.
There was a question.
I have to ask this question, and Lauren might be, because she was involved in this prior to you, the better one to ask. Because as much as I appreciate us all having opinions and experience and practical knowledge, you're not an electrician, I'm not an electrician, y'all aren't electricians. No, nobody in this room, as far as I know, is a licensed electrician. And as such, we're gonna sit here and bicker back and forth about the efficacy of heat pumps versus boilers, so
Right.
we are blue in the effing face. Has the committee talk to anybody who might be involved in an organization that focuses on efficiency in firehouses or fire departments? Is there a voice that we could hear? Give us a suggestion that they say, look, we've tried it, these different fire departments, these are the successes they've had, we think will work, so that we can kind of just put to rest the issue of which one is better. Could that be done? Is there anyone, you called the fire department, you called the chief of fire department in Southern Heuristic, and he's saying that it's working well. And I take his word for it with his experience. So,
To answer your question, I can do that.
I think it would be.
I'll take it on and
Because
do it.
we're gonna get into this circular
Yeah, I-
conversation every single time we sit here talking about it, if we don't have some sort of
And-
professional tell us.
And we can have, if we want, our architect is standing by, wasn't gonna jump on this call unless we really need. But they had, they're an architect group, but they bring in the experts from the different fields. And, you know, we could do that, but I will take that on as, I'll do it.
I say we make a motion to buy the building today. And we figure out, we talk to people who are professionals in this industry, we get a suggestion from them and we act on that.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, any further
There's
discussion?
one,
Oh,
there's a hand up out
There's
there.
a hand up on Zoom, Dan Tudor.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so I don't know why you need 400 amp service. I ran 34,000 BTU heat pumps in my uninsulated greenhouses as my primary source of heat on a 200 amp service. And I used propane heaters as backup that would operate when the power went out. And I never had any water freeze in there ever. The heat pumps were great. I don't know why they're recommending a 400 amp service unless you're using like much bigger heat pumps, but 34,000 BTU is the biggest ones I could buy at the time. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents here.
All right, thank you.
any other?
Wait, there's.
I mean, Pete's already pushed on the motion. I was just basically gonna comment on yeoman's work and talking to the other fire department, but when they say that they work perfectly, that, to your point, Pete, doesn't mean anything, quite honestly. Because working perfectly, it doesn't say what the heat system was before. What is their old boiler? Is it forced hot air? It's not, is it in-floor radiant? I doubt it. So I mean, there's a lot of questions that have to be asked beyond just how's it working? And, oh, we love the heat pump. So I mean, I don't care either one. It just, what is the most efficient for us? The other thing that hasn't been discussed at all, which I think has got to come on the table at some point in time, is this building is not complete, right? You still have phase two. And I still haven't heard any discussion about phase two, which is putting in a well and putting in restaurants, or not restaurants.
Oh,
putting in-
great.
Putting in, yeah, I'm gonna have that, you're fine with it, perfect, I'm gonna run it. No, to put in restrooms, to put in showers, if people, you know, if the guys are going on a call and they have to get cleaned up afterwards. Where is the discussion about phase two?
Well, the
We're running
reason
down
why
the
there
road.
isn't a discussion on phase two is that was phase one, but it was $1.4 million.
Yeah.
Right,
So at this point, I want to keep it. I mean, it's a good question, but you know, we know what we need, where we're at and what we have in front of us and the money we have. And, you know, we could squeeze the balloon a lot of different ways, but we don't have $1 million and we don't have $1.4 million. So, and we've talked to the guys who actually use the facility. They say it's important to have this building. And it's going to be critical for the community up north in a emergency situation. And we're doing what we have with the funds. So I think we have a motion on the floor.
Let's make sure we can move forward phase one, so that then we can plan for phase two.
Which is listed in the estimates we've looked at. There's well drilling
Yeah.
listed, there's plumbing listed, so.
Yep.
So it's not as if we're buying a building without having a plan.
Right.
We have ideas of the cost, we have ideas of the plan, so. I don't think we're just buying it and they're dropping hope for best.
Right.
no, I've seen the quotes, I get that, I haven't heard a plan, I've seen you've got estimates, that's great.
It's because if we
That's how
can't
the
get past
Civil War-
phase one,
One,
there's
we
no
don't have a
reason to
phase
waste the
two,
breath
yeah.
on waste phase two. Just to be,
Look,
of course, yeah.
All right, is there any
Excuse me.
further questions, discussion, Mert?
To answer a little bit to Pete's question. Short history as I can do it. First quote, way too high. It had everything under the sun in the quote. And I blame the committee that they didn't analyze why that bid was $1 million plus. Because there was a lot of stuff in there. So we went with different approaches, rearranged some things to the site. Started sizing things there, then we considered steel building. But ever since that point, the committee and a lot of individuals were beating their head against the wall, trying to get the overall budget down to that $400,000 range. And we was cutting the pump, the well, we was cutting the septic, we was cutting the interior walls, we was cutting the bathroom out, we was doing all this cutting out, and the price would never get down to $400,000. Okay, nobody was looking at the heat pumps solar array and the EV chargers, you take all that crap out. You will see a big difference in price that we might be able to bring back the well, septic, and the interior petitions. That's all I suggested, and it took the committee a year to figure out, until I suggested, let's look at some alternatives on the heat source. Like I said before, I need heat, I don't need air conditioning. So that's just a little explanation to Pete. If we wanna do more analysis, it's gonna take more frigging time to get this project
It'll
done.
take a phone call, call somebody who could give us some input on this, that isn't just us sitting here arguing about it back and forth.
Well, I think right now, we, will at least have some numbers to compare, and I think it probably makes sense to have our architect come to our meeting when we have the estimate, so that he can walk us through those, any questions that come up.
Yep.
Any further discussion before we vote?
Steve, I just one last question. Sorry, on the, you said that there were 2 hanging units that were not mentioned before that are
Yeah,
heating
and
units.
electric.
Those are electric.
And they were mentioned before.
I don't know, okay.
All right, we'll call for a vote. Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Pete,
Aye.
Shay, aye. We've got a building. Thank you to the committee for getting us here. We've got more work to do, but very much appreciate your persistence to keep us moving.
I'm going home.
Not quite yet.
Right.
Sea level rise, there's a meeting tomorrow at 4:30 if anybody would like to join. Lauren, do you have any update you want to give on the municipal building project that's not the Up Island Public Safety Garage? You are muted.
I'm so sorry. No, I don't have an update.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the updates? We've got planning board meeting March 24th, budget workshop next Wednesday. Anything else that we want to? All right, Janet, town manager's report.
I've given you committee minutes from the February 27th Board of Appeals regarding the schedule that they've come up with and deadlines regarding the LoC application. The January 21st minutes of the Alice L. Pendleton Library trustee meeting, minutes from the February 19th Emergency Ferry Task Force, and February 27th Lighthouse Committee minutes. Under correspondence, we've received the February Bar Harbor Wealth Management Capital Reserve sub-accounting, an email from on February 27th from Barbara Arsenault with the total Waldo County budget, as you had asked last time. It's $12,778,840.43. March 3rd, a letter that I sent to Maple Grove Cemetery regarding their rescinding their permission to use Maple Grove Cemetery during the East Shore Drive shutdown. March 4th, letter to Waldo County Commissioners supporting Northport suggestion to allow one member that is not an elected official to be on their board. March 4th, Peter Wilcox forwarded an email from William Geary on the 2025 fair adjustment illustration, 13.5%. March 7th, East Shore Drive repair update. The roadway will remain open. March 10th, letter to Maple Grove Cemetery requesting their gate opening the weekend. Culverts get replaced at Lorena's Cove. And then I did hear back from Linda Acorn and David Pendleton did stop in, I think it was Monday, and said that the town could use the roadway for that weekend, or as long as it was not muddy. So that's what we pray. I've given you a handout from the January 23rd Main State Ferry Service Advisory Board minutes. And under my report, I just want to mention on the 10th of March, Tina, deactivated 19 broadband accounts, and then half have paid up since then, so that's good news, so.
Yeah,
Hey, that means I wasn't one of them.
No, you would know probably who.
no, she keeps trying to log on to mine.
Oh, good.
It's no easy, his password is bears, I mean.
Probably could have figured that one out.
Any questions for Janet?
No.
All right, I don't see any old business, no other business,
I have other business.
okay?
Did we hear back from the insurance company on? Okay, so this might be out of line. The lighthouse is trying to install a railing in the tower for safety purposes. That way, when they open up the light tower, people don't potentially slide or fall or hurt themselves. We have a call into the insurance company to make sure that they're cool that we can put in a rail. The problem is that the quote that we have is from a steel company. So we would like to, if we can hear back from the insurance company, they already have the money in the budget. It was part of their fundraising that they did. We've got the nice quote on it. Would it be appropriate for me to ask the board to give them permission pending insurance approval to go forth with the purchase of the railing and installation?
I mean, I think if they have the money in the budget, they don't need our approval.
The insurance is down, they've got the money.
Can we have a symbolic motion? Because that's what Ken was here for, and then he had to go. I can't, because I'm on the board.
Motion to allow White House Committee, pending insurance's approval to purchase and install a railing in their light tower.
Yes.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor? Melissa, Steve, Pete, Jay, aye, Lauren.
Paying attention.
Should I get to go?
Aye.
And then we don't have to have the lighthouse committee come back and
Right.
try to do it again and we don't get stalled. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
All right, no other business. Next up, let's approve warrant number 19.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa.
Aye.
Steve,
aye.
Pete.
Yes.
Jay, aye. No appointments and I have no further comments tonight. Thanks everyone for hanging in. And thank you, I'm excited about the building.
Great. Cameron, yeah.
Lauren, any comments?
No comments.
Melissa? Nope. Steve?
No.
Pete?
Nope.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yay, aye.
That's efficiency in government.